Hi everyone, if you're new here, my name's Abby. Today I'm going to be sharing with you 3 real food breakfast ideas using ingredients that you likely have on hand, and we're going to be incorporating some of our home canned goods. The first recipe that we're making is an oat flour Dutch baby. If you're not gluten-free, you can easily swap in all-purpose flour in equal amounts, but oat flour is one of my favorite flour alternatives. It is super easy to make at home just with some rolled oats. If you're celiac, you're going to want to make sure that you get certified gluten-free oats. Now in a cold cast iron pan, I'm just adding 3 tablespoons of butter, and we're gonna put that into a cold oven and get it heated to 425. The butter is going to melt and get nice and brown in that process. Then in a large bowl, I am adding 4 eggs from our hens. We'll add in a cup of milk, a tablespoon or 2 of our honey, and a splash of vanilla, and get that whisked together. Once all of those wet ingredients are mixed together well, I'm going to add in a cup of oat flour. Again, you could swap in a cup of all-purpose flour here, and a 1/4 teaspoon of sea salt. Once the oven has come to temperature, we're going to remove the cast iron pan. It is nice and hot now, and that butter has started to brown, and we're going to pour in the batter. This is going to go back into the oven at 425 for 15 to 20 minutes until it is nice and golden and puffy, and it is a great alternative to your traditional pancake. With all those eggs, it's got a little bit more protein, and it is a favorite of ours. Today, I am serving this up with some of our vanilla plum preserves. This next recipe that we're making is something that I make a variation of just about weekly. It is a great way to use up a ton of eggs, and it's one of my husband's favorites to bring with him for breakfast at work. So we are going to be making an egg bake, and this version uses some of our home canned potatoes and Salsa Verde. I have a dozen eggs cracked in a bowl here, and I'm going to be adding our roasted green tomato Salsa Verde here just to taste. I'm adding about 3/4 of a cup, and we're going to get that all whisked together. Next, I am draining off and rinsing well a quart jar of our home canned potatoes. Now, usually I find that the liquid in the jar does stay quite clear, but in this batch, I was using just the last of our 2022 potatoes, and they had just started to sprout a little bit, so I think that contributed to the liquid being a little bit more starchy. Then I am taking my cast iron pan and heating it over medium heat, and I'm going to be adding about a tablespoon of tallow and letting that melt. Once that pan is nice and hot and the tallow has melted, I'm adding in the potatoes, and I'm not looking for the potatoes to get crispy, though you could definitely do that. My main reason for heating up the pan and adding the tallow is to make sure that the eggs don't stick. Adding eggs to a cold cast iron pan can be a nightmare to clean. And then I'm going to get some raw cheddar cheese shredded up. At this point, you could add in any extra veggies to the potatoes. Typically, we would do peppers, onions, maybe some kale or spinach, herbs, but today we're keeping it very simple with just the potatoes. And then I'm going to add over top the egg and salsa verde mixture. I'm going to top that off with the cheddar cheese and a little bit more salsa verde. This will bake for about 30 minutes at 350, and it makes for a great breakfast option to prep at the beginning of the week for a protein-rich breakfast all week long. I like to have mine with some sauerkraut on the side. The last recipe that we're making is an apple loaf, and for this we're going to be using our homemade apple sauce as well as our homemade apple butter. Now this is something I would definitely have with additional protein. Some ideas would be a couple eggs, some sausage, or some Greek yogurt. And to start out, I'm adding a cup of plain unsweetened applesauce to a large bowl. And to that, I'm going to be adding 2 eggs, a half a cup of Greek yogurt. You could also do a half cup of melted coconut oil or melted butter in place of the Greek yogurt. And then about 2 teaspoons or as much as your heart desires for vanilla extract, and half a cup of sugar. For sugar, I am using panela, which is an unrefined cane sugar. Once all of those ingredients are well whisked together, we're going to add in our dry ingredients. We're using oat flour for this recipe again. This is one of my favorite gluten-free flour options. If you're celiac, you're just going to want to make sure that you're using certified gluten-free oats. So I'm adding in 2 cups of oat flour, And then we're going to be adding in a teaspoon and a half of baking powder, half a teaspoon of sea salt, 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon, and I also added in some fresh grated nutmeg. After the batter was well mixed together, I just added it to a greased loaf pan. You could also easily make this into muffins. And then I took my apple butter and I dolloped it over top of the loaf and used my knife to make a pretty swirl design. This apple loaf bakes in about 50 to 60 minutes at 350, and if you wanted to turn it into muffins, I would begin checking them at about 20 minutes. I hope this video provided you with some real food breakfast inspiration. Thank you for watching.